Pritesh Walia is a jazz guitar player and educator who's on the line here just now. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Just, surviving in Boston cold.
Oh, yeah. It's beginning to get warmer here all of a sudden, so there's some positivity there.
Yeah, same here, but I'm sure in no time it'll start snowing again in Boston.
Probably. Anyway, how would you describe the style of your guitar playing and music, first of all?
Yeah, I think if I had to think of my style, I try my best not to box myself into a specific style of music, but my influences have been mostly jazz musicians. But I'm also like super influenced by classical music and Brazilian music, so I would call myself a distracted jazz player as my style, because as much as I like the freedom aspect of playing jazz, I also like everything else that other genres have offered me, So
yeah, do you think it's important to get inspiration from a variety of genres?
I think so. As a player and as a composer, as a writer, I think it's important to not always keep your mind boxed in one genre of music. Even though any genre of music will offer you a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to put in your own music.
Yeah.
But every music comes from a different lineage of history and culture, which is very unique to itself.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to get something from everything.
Yeah. So what was your earliest memory of music?
Well, I think I'm fortunate enough to come from a country like India, where music is everywhere in the corner of every street.
Yeah.
You go watch a movie, there's a music, because every movie is a musical.
Yeah.
You go for you go for someone's wedding, it's you have music. You go for anything as amazing and happy as someone's wedding, or someone passes away in their funeral. You experience music in every place. So for me, I think I was experiencing music all the time, but I wasn't really realizing that I was experiencing music all the time. So if I had to put myself and ask myself when was the first time, I would say since the moment I could comprehend that there's music going on, which is early age, 6, 8. But I never really formed interest to understand what this is.
Yeah. And I wouldn't really think of jazz as being a type of music that is traditionally listened to in India, but is it like that, or is it still a global genre that you still get over there?
Well, you're completely right. Jazz is completely not a part of the music listening and music performance experience in India. Well, primarily because India is very, very rich in its culture. There's North Indian, South Indian music. There's the Bollywood, popular music, and then this is mostly what comprises of the music. There's a small niche community of people, very small, that want to get into jazz and want to expand it, So yeah, you're completely right. Jazz is not something that's there. Even my parents till date don't really understand the music I like and I listen to.
Yeah. So how did you actually end up playing jazz if you're from a country like India?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, that's the interesting question, because at very young age, when I was I don't know, maybe 10 or 11, I remember being in an Indian. I was in an extracurricular aspect part of my schooling, and we would get 30 minutes or an hour to try out. It used to be called Music, Arts, or Dance, MDA, and I knew I can't dance, and I used to take art lessons already. So I was doing that, and I was I have this fascination of music or playing an instrument. I need to see what this offers. And I would go into my music classes. Well, they were all classical Indian music classes, and with Indian classical instruments. So I was always not really into it, because I would see these instruments and this music everywhere. So for me, the interest kind of wasn't there in me, because I was seeing it so much. But I had this a guitar in the corner of the room that had 3 strings that I was like, wow, this seems like a cool instrument, and I could just pick up and strum and something would come out of it. But I think my interest to jazz, like first it started off with, what is this instrument, guitar? Let's try and play it. Let's try and understand what's happening, and then try and learn rock tunes, because Indian classical music was at such an abundance in India that I kind of wanted to get away from that. Not in a bad way. It's just, if you have something happening around you so much, either you want to stay in it and continue and enjoy it, or you want to find something that you've never heard or seen before.
Yeah.
And my mind was more towards something that I haven't seen or heard. So I gravitated towards Western music, And jazz was like something that I found way later in my life, when I started getting into education and teaching myself what is happening with this instrument.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff did you do in between starting music and discovering jazz? Was it a mixture?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that period of time, I was just trying to figure out, and I had where I come from in India, we're from this place called Noida in India. It's like part in the capital region, and at that point, I don't think I even owned a guitar. So the first thing was trying to just learn to play whatever I can in school. But the thing is also, this is so weird, because I feel like some of my folks from school would like listen to this somewhere and they'd probably get a good laugh, because we were kind of forced to learn Indian classical music, but I would go home and try and learn AC/DC or and I would show up to class trying to play that. And my teachers were always super annoyed of me, because I never really wanted to study the stuff they were giving out to me. And I kind of wanted to find my own thing on the instrument. And I think it was not too long till my teacher, who was teaching me Indian classical music, kicked me out of the class.
Wow.
And said that, this is not happening. Well, because I understand, because there's a certain amount of respect and culture that goes with Indian classical music, and that has to be a part of you. But that was completely missing for me. My attitude was more about, I want to learn to play rock music or blues music, be cool like the rock band kids, I want to be that. So not too long ago, I was kicked out, which was a good and a bad thing. A bad thing because, well, I don't get to access the guitar that I was, because I didn't have a guitar at home. But good thing, I got this free time of an hour where I could borrow a guitar and just practice myself at school. So I would just teach myself rock songs and try and convince my mom to buy me a guitar. That was like the main thing that was happening.
And there is generally this idea that music can't be a proper job, and maybe, I don't know, in India, is that even more of an ideology? So have you made music a proper job for you?
Well, I mean, I'm now in Boston, which is very different from life in India. I think in India, yes, most people still consider, and I hear this all the time when I go to India and teach, that you can't really make a life in music and really survive and feed yourself and make decent bread by just playing music. And in India, well, that's because the problem in India is that there are set paths already. In school, we're taught very high level of math, very high level of science, because they kind of expect you to graduate and become a doctor or an engineer or something in a high industry that involves technology. So a lot of math, brain, STEM, technological, because that's kind of understood as like the highest paying jobs that kind of help you survive. Arts don't really have that much of a value, and actually it's the opposite. Arts are looked at as something that you can survive in, and in community, people kind of look down on it. That they're like, oh, this person is pursuing arts. It's kind of, you already know that's like set up to failure. It's kind of how it is taught of. Unfortunately, unless you're like a really renowned and come from a big family of Indian classical musicians, then it's like kind of rooted in your family, and then you kind of really looked up upon, But other than that, it's it's almost impossible to convince, even till now, your parents that you want to do music. I had a special story, but most 99% of the time, it's almost impossible. But if I have to say for myself in Boston, I think it's definitely a hustle to actually survive as a musician.
Yeah.
But, well, I've been here for like 8, 9 years, I got my undergrad here. I got my master's in jazz here, and I teach at 3 different schools. I gig almost every other day, so it's a lot of work, but it's surviving.
Yeah, and gigging every other day. Would that have been particularly tough to get by during COVID?
Yeah, well, during COVID, I think it was a really big hit for all of us musicians because our entire job is to not be in our house, be outside, be playing, be teaching.
Yeah.
But I think it also opened some doors for us, which we weren't fully aware of, which is the online industry of teaching and playing. There were a lot of online gigs happening all the time, and people were still buying tickets as if they were at the show. That was something. But I think for me, weirdly, I started getting more people interested in lessons with me because COVID made them stay at home and they had more time in their hands.
Yeah.
So people were actually more available to get together for a lesson because they know they're not going anywhere. They're in their apartment, So all those hundreds of people that messaged me and they're like, "Hey man, I want to take a lesson. Just life is busy. I can't do it right now. I'll let you know as soon as that happens." All of those people got together and they all hit me up. So. Yeah. Which was a good thing, Yeah. But now things are all in person, and now it's a combination of online and in person because I feel like also the COVID thing kind of made us a little lazy.
Yeah,
we'd rather do online than commute to an hour lesson that's far away.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think a lot of people now are just enjoying staying at home, watching the telly instead of going out.
I think I still have a few friends that aren't musicians, but that used to have full-time working job at an office, but then transitioned to online because of COVID and now stuck to that. Now they just stay at home and work, Which is, I think that's great.
Yeah. I don't know anyone that worked from home and then went back to work fully. They've only sort of partly went back.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's more, it's a little better to work from home because you want to get things done at home too, and do it in your comfort level because you can work as much as you want, and take your time to do it. So I think it's like time efficient.
Yeah. So what are you most proud of in your musical career so far?
I think one of the things that I would say I'm proud of, and I give credit to my parents and for support a lot, is my education. I have an undergrad from school in LA. I went to Berklee and I got an undergrad in like a dual major. I got my master's here at NEC and in jazz. And I think this process of education has really changed me as a person, as a player. I'm also continuing to pursue my education and wanting to get a doctorate soon. But and I teach at a couple of colleges here, and it's just the world of education has kind of matured me in a lot of ways of thinking of teaching and music. So I think I can't really talk much about how I am as a player because as musicians we are all very critical about ourselves. Yeah. So our good things are only about the good things that people have to say about us rather than good things that we have to say about ourselves. That's not so I mean I'll just leave that to the audience, so people that listen to my music if they like it or not. But in just if there's something I could be proud of is probably where I am educationally and how I'm able to offer that back to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's coming up for you? Have you got any more sort of songs and pieces of music coming out and things you're working on?
Sure, totally. There's a lot of stuff. I have my friend Henry Godfrey, who's a jazz composer here in Boston. He's releasing his big band album, which is a lot of 20 people in a band. It was really hard to schedule, but we got it together, and it's a really big band. And his album's coming out this year, and I'm playing all of the music. I have a couple solos, so that's really exciting. and probably there's going to be some kind of playing and touring for that in the future. The other one is I just recorded my jazz trio, just called Pritesh Walia Trio, and it's 8 songs that I just recorded in a studio and with a really amazing bass player and a drummer, and the album's currently being mixed, and then it's going to get mastered, and I'm going to set a date to release it this year. I feel in a few months, in my opinion, as soon as things get done. And then I'm going to try and get a tour for that. I don't know if there are people listening to this in like Boston in some ways. I'm playing a show this Saturday here in Boston, where at the Lily Pad, which is a very known venue in Boston, and I'm playing all my music from my album for the first time live. So that is something that's coming up.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, in the meantime, where are we able to keep up to date with you and find your education services everywhere if we're interested?
I think everything is well and provided on either my Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is more common for me because that's where I get the most amount of requests for lessons, educational material, as well as shows. And I keep that very updated on when I'm playing, where I'm playing, what I'm releasing. More than Facebook. I feel Facebook is just send the material out when you have it. Instagram is kind of the place to build people up and lead them to the material. You know, you can't really post the song on Instagram, but you can always tell them that it's coming. And Facebook will definitely have the song. That's kind of how it works. Sorry.
Someone's in a rush to get home for tea.
Yeah. I live right in the center of Boston's heart. So I'm like in the most busy street of the place. It's always very loud and fun to be here.
On that bombshell, many thanks for coming on the show today. It's been great to have you on.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Really nice to meet you and talk to you.